Okay, we're going to start with Friday. So Friday was David Peralta's 10-year service time anniversary. So he hit 10 years of service time.
Yes.
Fewer than 10% of players in MLB history hit 10 years of service time. It is honestly really hard to get to. And there's a reason not many players make it, because you go through so many ups and downs. Usually by 10 years, a lot of times you're out of the league, right? So huge for him. Luis Ariz brought him a cake, a giant signed bottle of Don Julio 1942 tequila.
Okay.
He wrote congratulations on it, put silver slugger, gold glove. People were stopping by David Peralta's locker throughout the clubhouse. Tweeted that picture if you want to go see it. So David Peralta, 36 years old, began his career as a pitcher in 2006, never made it past rookie ball in the Cardinals organization. He said it was actually Mike Schilt who released him back in the day. Now that's how baseball is, right? Then you come back together and now you're on a team trying to make a run into the playoffs and the World Series. He worked odd jobs, worked the deep fryer, greeted customers at McDonald's, tried to reinvent himself as a position player. And actually, Gwen and Chris talked to him on Friday. So go back and listen to that interview.
That's great.
Did a nice job with him. Yeah, right. But like at that point, you're thinking, am I even going to get back in baseball? Am I even going to make it, right? You've already been spit out as a pitcher. So are you even going to make it back? So he played independent ball in 2011, 2012, signed as an outfielder by the Diamondbacks in 2012 to be this guy. And then, went on to win a Silver Slugger, a Gold Glove, have a really nice career. He was a big part of Saturday's win over the Braves. He went 3 for 4 with 2 RBI. Honestly, he is one of those guys. You're just like, I hope he does well, because you want him to stick around. He is beloved in that clubhouse, just gets it. From Venezuela, understands how hard it is to get to where he got to, and how hard it is for guys to play the game, and just one of those that's like a supporter in the clubhouse, you know?
Yeah.
Right, he's sandwiched right by Jackson Merrill, right next to Donovan Solano. A really nice kind of setup that they've got going on there, and he's really big on Jackson Merrill too. So just really cool, because again, it's so hard to make 10 years. I know it's fun to talk about all the young guys, and it is, but to me, if you're a young guy and you see a guy make 10 years, hopefully something goes off in your head. Like, I want to know all his secrets. I want to know what he did, because it is so hard to have longevity in this game, or really in any sport, honestly.
Well, I heard yesterday when Sean Reynolds got in, and then Schilt said the kind of classic, like, only 22,000 guys or so have ever done this. And so now think about that. Fewer than 10% make it to 10 years of service. So now you're talking about a subset of about 2,000 people around 2,000 people in the history of baseball that have achieved 10 years of Major League service time. There's a reason you get so many things. You get that fully vested pension. I mean, getting that vested pension means he's set. Now, I mean, not completely, but he's pretty much set for the rest of his life.
That's it. And I talked to him a little bit about, he had 6 surgeries, right? So he had 6 surgeries, and he talked about how he had to start from zero after every surgery, and you have to start and just once again say, nope, I'm going to come back stronger. But 6 times at least he had to start from zero, not to mention being spit out as a pitcher, not knowing if he was going to make it back in. So to get to that fully vested part for his family, for him, it's, that's the kind of thing that you love. That's the kind of story that you love.
Yeah, for some guys, it's the middle of their career, and they get that. But for a guy like David Peralta, you've made it kind of to the end of your career. You're 36. You don't know what 37 promises, but you've got this now. You've got the gold card. You've got it. You've got 10 years service time. You made it.
It's really cool. It's really cool. Xander Bogaerts came back into the clubhouse, obviously played 2 of the 3 games over the weekend. So it was great to talk to him. I talked to him a little bit one-on-one about whether the break helped him a little bit mentally, because he had struggled so much at the beginning of the season. And he said, you know what? That can happen a lot. Like, having a little bit of a break can help you mentally. But he said it really wasn't the mental part. He said it was the second base. He really felt so out of place playing second base to start the season. He was very firm in the fact that he didn't want to say he was put in a bad spot, because he said, I'm a professional. But the fact that for his entire career, his body was going one way, and he had to change his body, especially on double plays, to go a different way, really impacted him and just had him feeling very out of whack. I think had he gotten the offseason, he would have been fine. But coming into spring training, a rushed spring training with them going to Korea, he again would not put his offensive struggles on that, but he would put the fact that his first part of the season, he felt really out of place. He just did not feel like his body was normal. He did not feel like things were going right for him. And his mind, he said it was a lot harder than he thought it was going to be. And I can understand that. Like, you've played one position, right? You've played that shortstop position, and your body has been trained. Your muscle memory has gone a certain way. And so for you to then have a few weeks in spring training before you're out there playing at second base, it's not that second base is too hard for him. It's just that it was a big adjustment for his body at the time. So I think it just had him feeling a little bit out of whack. So this past break, they worked a lot at second base, and he breathed a huge sigh of relief. He said he feels so much better there now, so much more comfortable. They did a lot of footwork, a lot of angles, just a ton of all that. So he said that that's what this break was really good for him. And I'm sure that helps mentally as well for his confidence, is just feeling like he is now more comfortable at second base, doesn't have to think about it so much.
Well, that's fascinating, because I remember very well us doing the show the morning that they brought him into the office and made that announcement. It was the first day that players arrived at spring training. It was the day after Valentine's Day, and he literally drove into the Peoria parking lot as a shortstop, walked through the door as a shortstop, got pulled into an office, and was a second baseman like 20 minutes later. And then we gave you all the sound of how he handled it. And I remember we talked about this. We talked about Mike Schilt going down to Aruba and having dinner with Xander and hanging out with him, spending a couple of days with him, and they didn't talk about converting to second base at that time, that they didn't give him the off season to work on stuff, and to, even if he wanted to go play Winter League and get those reps and get that feel for second base, they really left him in the dark. And it appears, Annie, that was, in hindsight, in retrospect, it was an attempt to keep doors open in case Ha-Seong Kim was traded in an offseason deal, maybe a Marlins deal, maybe a version of an Arise deal that didn't come to pass over the winter. And so in those negotiations, they didn't want to tell Xander, you're going to be second, because they didn't know if Kim was going to be there and force the issue. But boy, that decision looks like it kind of backfired in retrospect.
It does. And I don't know the whole backstory to it and why they decided to wait. But yeah, that's plausible, right? And he said, he wouldn't say that playing it short was easy, but it was very normal to him, he said. So double plays for him were really hard because he was coming from the other side. Now he has to do it on a whole other side. So his body had some rough days reacting, is what he said, from some of that change, And again, I think, you have to think of it too, where say you're doing a broadcast, Craig, and you're like, well, I know my hardest part is at the beginning of the broadcast. I have to get these 5 names right or whatever. And then you sink in and you're like, okay, cool. I made it past that part. I'm all good. Well, for Xander, you're always coming back out. You're always coming back out for defense. Yeah. And so you never get to kind of relax. You never get to kind of go, hey, I'm all good. You're always thinking about playing. And he was really very importantly saying, he's not saying that he was put in a bad spot. He's not blaming his offense on it. But what he is just saying is that it was harder on him than he thought. It affected him in just the way that his body was feeling after certain days, and the way that his muscle memory was, and just the way that he felt comfortable or not at second base. And I thought that was cool to hear. It's just interesting to hear.
He's an honest person who answers things honestly, and I give him so much credit for that. And I hope everyone in the listening audience kind of gives Xander credit for that, instead of knocking him because he's vulnerable and he admits things, of weaknesses, frailties, so to speak. I hope instead of knocking him for that, you respect that he's being very human and very open in what he's saying. A lot of guys would not have handled it as classily as Xander did. Yeah. But even when he's saying to you, like, I'm not going to make excuses and I'm not going to say I'm being put in a bad spot, but also, I really was messed up. We can say it. You don't have to, Xander. They did put you in a bad spot. They did put you in a bad spot. They could have handled it differently. They could have communicated with you, but I don't think they had the ability to. I honestly don't think they had the ability to say in January, for sure you're playing second base for our team, because they didn't know in January for sure if they were going to have Ha-Seong Kim, trade Ha-Seong Kim, sign Ha-Sung Kim. I think all of those possibilities were up in the air.
Yeah, and please understand, he's not complaining about second base. To your point, Craig, he is like, what the team needs. I am there for you. I've got it. You know what he did while he was healing from his hurt shoulder? He worked entirely at second base, made sure that he got up to speed, fixed the footwork he needed to fix. He's not complaining. He's saying, hey, that time might have done me good.
Yeah.
Because now I feel good going out there and I'm less worried about it. You know, my body just did not feel, it felt very different the first half of the season, very different than what he's used to. So I agree. He's being accountable, and I hope that people aren't looking at it any other way. He's being accountable. He put the work in, and now he feels better.
Great report.
Yeah. I have one more. Sean Reynolds.
Sean Reynolds.
Like you talked about, 6'8",
the big boy.
Very tall, made his major league debut yesterday, struck out 3, allowed a hit in a scoreless 7th inning. So talked about his transition from position player to pitcher. He was messing around the COVID year, and the front office in Miami was like, hey, you know, you don't look so bad pitching, right? Like, you're messing around, but like, maybe we should make you a pitcher. And he said, you know what, let's see what happens. I might as well. He said, I was hitting 170 for 5 years, so I might as well try something. I love when guys are like that. And so then he said, he said this, he said, right away I felt like it was where I was supposed to be. The feeling I didn't feel for 5 years in the box, I got on the mound as soon as I went on the mound. How fascinating is that too? He would never be there. He would have just probably flamed out as a hitter,
right,
as a position player, had he not messed around and Miami came to him and said, hey, let's try to reinvent you as a pitcher, because it obviously wasn't getting done hitting, you know? But just the feeling that he had on the mound, totally different than what he felt as a hitter.
And when you bring these giant men into baseball, it's going to be something because, you know, for him as a hitter, it was having a way too big of a strike zone. Mm-hmm. It was way too long of a swing, right? Like just the mechanics not being there, not being able to put it together. But he found something on the mound where now he can leverage his size to his benefit. I love the way he was ripping his slider yesterday. He was really throwing it with a lot of confidence. Kid coming up in the big leagues, you really worry about. You know, he didn't show a lot of command in the minor leagues, so you kind of worry when he's going to get to the bigs. He might do a Major and just walk everybody. Major had great command in the minors, and he came up and he walked everyone. Reynolds, he went after it yesterday. That was exciting to see. Who knows what the upside is, but tell you what, the Padres might as well be holding open tryouts for the bottom of that bullpen right now. So if Reynolds can be good, man, you're going to stick around and stay for a while.
Yeah, and I've got a lot on Luis Ariz and his thumb, but we can get into that when we do later in the show.
Well, let's take a break and we'll come right back to it.
Perfect.
Luis Ariz announcing he'd sit out the All-Star game. Just how banged up has the Padres All-Star been over the course of the last month? Because the numbers would indicate maybe he's really been hurt. Not just not performing. We'll find out some more when we continue with your Padres Deep Dive Hour. Hope you're enjoying it. Annie and Elston on The Fan.